Today's episode of Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine ends with a lot of hope.
If there was no hope, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I have a lot of hope, and my kids have a lot of hope, and everyone that I work with has a whole lot of hope.
But it begins with a lot of chaos. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine. In a moment, these school children are going to release a bunch of teeny tiny Atlantic salmon into a Hemlock Stream in Argyle. From here, they will go downstream into the Penobscot and out to sea for the next 3 years before some of them come back to spawn. I'm talking about the fish, not the kids. Atlantic salmon used to be incredibly abundant in Maine's coastal rivers. Today, they're an endangered species. That's why these kids from Alton are carrying small cups of small fish and releasing them into the stream. If all goes according to plan, some of them will travel all over the North Atlantic and then return to this very spot to create the next generation. Maybe we can save the Atlantic salmon. Maybe we can't. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine is brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS. Now then, we start on the riverbank with a whole bunch of kids from Alton Elementary School, one of 68 schools involved in saving the salmon.
Brianna, over this way. Nora.
We're standing on the banks of a small stream in Argyle. In less than a mile, this stream will flow into the Penobscot River.
Hey, Maddox, come on over. Maddox!
I'm with 3 parents, 2 teachers, and a whole bunch of kids from Alton Elementary School.
Okay, come on over. Come on over.
The ringmaster of this circus is Mandy Jo Pelletier.
Everyone listening that's going to be putting in fish?
Oh, we're all putting in the fish, right, Maddox?
We're all going to take turns putting in fish. Every grown-up and every kid's going to have a fish opportunity.
I want to stand on the log.
Aaron, listen up.
We listening?
Take him back to school.
Okay, so there's 2 cups because I don't want too much going on all at once because we have to count the fish as they go in the water. Be very careful when you're holding your fish because remember, this is an endangered species, okay? Their survival depends on you not spilling them on the ground and then tripping and stepping on them, okay? Now, when you have a cup, Jimmy's going to tally off how many fish are in your cup. Now, because I scoop them, sometimes you'll get 1, sometimes you'll get 3, maybe even 4 in your cup. Just make sure that Jimmy knows how many and that he's checked them off before you let them out. I'm going to go check for poison ivy and prickly things and tripping hazards and make sure there's a good spot for us to walk down before we get started, okay?
Mandy Jo Pelletier is with the Atlantic Salmon Federation. She's been working on a project with school children around the state. This winter, they put salmon eggs into aquarium tanks in all of these classrooms, and the kids have been watching them hatch and develop. The smolt are now old enough to release, and that job is up to the kids. These smolt are still so tiny they can barely feed themselves, so they can't just be dumped into the Penobscot. They'd probably be swallowed up by bigger fish very quickly. These tiny fish need time to get bigger, and more importantly, they need time to learn how this particular stream smells. You'll see why in a moment. Before the kids go down, Mandy and I are scouting a safe path through the woods.
I'm just looking to make sure. Yeah, there's broken glass and stuff.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
So the kids follow us down and line up along the bank. Naturally, the black flies are coming out, but they're just swarming, no real biting yet. And here's what will happen. One by one, Mandy will fish some of the smolt out of the bucket in little cups. Each student will report the number of fish in the cup to Mandy's son, who is our official record keeper for the morning, and then gently dip the cup in the stream to let the fish out. Now, the kids have been watching these tiny fish for months, since they were eggs, and it's exciting to be doing something to save the salmon even at this age.
He's on a rock.
You're good right there. Yeah, Eli, you're good right there.
I want to show you where I fish. Come on.
Sit right on the log, guys. Actually, this is a great spot.
We fished right over on those logs.
Yeah.
And right here.
Everybody sit right on the log and
But
I'll
look.
get a good picture.
Right here. What's the snake? On those rocks.
No.
Down.
Sit on the log.
All these kids, the bank is a little muddy, and it'll be a miracle if nobody gets their feet wet. It's hard to believe that Atlantic salmon would use Hemlock Stream in Argyle as spawning territory. But that's the big surprise. The Penobscot and all of its tributaries were hugely important to the survival of Atlantic salmon.
Yeah, they're quite excited.
Oh, this is more trash. Does anyone see more trash around? Major part of keeping habitat safe.
Oh, have that?
Look that way.
No, we're gonna take care of it the way that we should. We're gonna recycle it.
I see more trash over there, though.
We'll clean it up on our way out.
That
Okay,
can be
good eye.
recycled.
It can. Okay. So I'm gonna do it just the way you're lined up, right down the side. Okay. Jimmy, are you ready for tally?
So hot.
You want to take your fish to a calm area where they will not get sucked immediately downstream. We have a little bit of a backflow here that's nice and calm.
Oh, did we check the temperature?
We can do that at any point.
Temperature matters. Salmon and trout are in the same fish family, and they all need cold water. It's got to be under 60.
We're good. Perfect temp, guys.
I may have checked the stream gauge online.
So what's the temperature supposed to be?
We had them at 50
All
or
right.
49.
So two fish.
So
you want to
it's
stand up
perfect.
first, and I'll hand them over. You're first
they're
in
all
line. You're
going to
first on
my-
the log.
I got one.
In a few minutes, we'll see how much these kids know about Atlantic salmon. Then, later in the show, we'll sit down with Mandy Pelletier and see how much you know. It's the mission of the Atlantic Salmon Federation to not only save the endangered salmon, but get everybody aware of just how much we stand to lose and how much we've lost already. The Federation has a Maine chapter, but all this stuff is also happening on the other side of the Canadian border.
That was just later.
It's okay. Do you know that salmon would eat that? If it fell in the water, the salmon would eat it for lunch.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
In 2001, the population of Atlantic salmon dropped to its lowest level ever. There are a lot of reasons, and we'll get to those later. But right now, these kids from the Alton Elementary School are doing their part to bring them back. In both Canada and the United States, some populations of wild Atlantic salmon have been declared endangered. That includes the Penobscot River. Even with so few fish left, this river is still considered the best chance for salmon in the United States. In Canada, the populations in the Bay of Fundy and on the ocean side of Nova Scotia are really bad off. Some of that, where there aren't even dams to kill off spining fish, are affected by other things. In some cases, acid rain has had such an impact that scientists have actually put lime in the river to bring the pH balance back towards normal.
The smell.
Can you guys explain how the fish find their way home?
The smell. Sense the smell. Sense the smell.
So how might a stream smell different than another stream?
Thank you very much. It does smell different from here because there's mud. It's actually mud here.
So different streams have different plants, like the elderberry or ferns, different things. Things we do or don't eat, and things that other animals do or don't eat. But depending on what's around the stream and what type of soil and rocks are in the stream and where the water's coming from, like we have a lot of bogs around here, so it makes the water look dark. Yeah, we have a lot of them right around here in the flat part of Maine.
So if you didn't know it before, you do now. Salmon leave Maine, go out to sea, spend several years swirling around the North Atlantic, and then find their way back to where they respond by smelling the differences in each river and stream. They smell their way home. I'm on the banks of the Hemlock Stream in Argyle with students from Alton Elementary School. For the last several months, they've been raising baby salmon from the time they were just eggs. In a moment, we'll see what they learned out of all this. You are listening to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket. A long time ago, Maine had an incredible number of Atlantic salmon. The Penobscot River was famous for spawning runs so amazing that it was said you could walk across the river on their backs. Dams get most of the blame for cutting them off from their spawning habitat and reducing the population to the point where they are now federally endangered. But there are other problems as well. The Atlantic Salmon Federation was formed on both sides of the border with Canada to do something about it. Locally, Mandy Jo Pelletier is the person who's trying to do something about it. She's got 68 projects going in Maine schools, giving elementary students a chance to help the salmon recover. These schools have been raising salmon smolts since they were eggs. Today, in Argyle, students from the elementary school in Alton are releasing almost 100 baby salmon into the stream, where they will fatten up a little, head downstream to the Penobscot, and sooner or later head out to sea. Very few will survive, maybe none. But any that do will come right back to this stream in about 3 years and start another generation. These fish that are being released right now by the kids are barely longer than your thumbnail. The bigger, darker ones have just begun feeding on their own. So, kids, who can tell me how all these babies got fed from the time they hatched until now?
The yolk sac. The yolk sac.
A yolk sac?
Yeah.
Really?
They feed off that. Mm-hmm. It's part of the body, and they feed off it.
And they feed themselves.
They just.
It's their little lunchbox.
That's for Olivia. It's Olivia. Are you the last?
Oh, look, there's one right here. I wonder if they'll try.
Did you guys tell them how long the fish feed themselves? Do you guys know what stage they stop feeding themselves?
Oh, yeah. Fry.
Par. At the end of fry, yep, into par.
So let's put the kids to the test. Between the egg and adulthood, salmon grow through a bunch of stages. So let's see who knows. I'm going to cheat. I've got Nora here, and I know her parents and grandparents, and I know she's smart. So Nora, you've been watching these since they were first put in the aquarium, right?
Yep.
So what have you learned from it so far?
That they don't eat off like regular, like worms and stuff. They eat off like a yolk sac on their belly.
Mm-hmm. When they're first hatched.
Yep.
And then they do that for how long, do you know?
Until the end of fry.
Then they become what?
Par.
And what do they eat then?
They eat insects and worms and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And algae kind of stuff.
And then they get bigger and they eat what?
And
bigger
then
fish.
They eat big fish, yeah.
Nora passes the test. Let's pick out another student from Alton Elementary. Livia. So what's the whole life cycle of salmon?
Egg, Alvin, fry, par, small, adult.
Now what's the difference between all those stages? I mean, the egg, I think I know what an egg is.
They have different shapes and colors.
Mm-hmm. Now when it goes from being a fry to a par, what's the change in color?
It's like it starts out as like brown and silver, and then it stays brown and silver, but has a bunch of colorful dots all over it.
Now, did you watch some of these fish do that?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
And I made a life cycle.
So once they leave here, where are they going to go?
Ocean.
Yep. And how long are they going to stay out there? I bet they stay a few years.
I think they stay a couple of years.
Yeah. Then when they're old enough to spawn, they'll come right back here?
Yeah, they'll come right back here, lay their eggs. I think the females die, but the males go back to the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Now, how do they know to come right back to this spot?
By the sense of smell.
Yeah. Because every stream smells different to a salmon?
Yep, because of the plants and I think the water.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're in Argyle, and there's Alton Bog just up the stream here. So that probably puts a certain odor into the water if you smell like Alton Bog.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Next victim, Brianna. What is the life cycle of a salmon?
Well, the first stage is an egg, and then when they develop, they turn into a elvin.
Mm-hmm.
And then the elvins turn into a fry. And then the fries turn into a par. And then the par turns into a adult salmon.
Now, if you were to look into an aquarium, for instance, that had salmon in it, would you be able to tell the difference between all these stages?
Yes, because they all have different colors and shape.
And you've now watched that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So how many have you released so far?
There's like 100 something in there, so maybe like 90.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one last one. Let's try Elijah. What's the life cycle of a salmon?
It goes to an egg, to an elvin, to a fry, to a par, to a smolt, to an adult.
Why does it have all these stages, do you know?
What?
Why does it have all these stages?
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, do people have stages? I suppose we're babies.
Yeah, babies, kids, teenagers, adults.
Okay, at this point, all of the smolt are in the stream. None were accidentally dropped on shore and trampled. No kids slipped into the water or muddied shoes. Nobody stepped into hidden poison ivy or walked on broken glass. I guess we've done our part to restore the Atlantic salmon without significant casualties. especially since all these swarming black flies aren't really biting yet. Schools all over the state are doing the same thing, or at least schools near traditional salmon rivers, thanks to the Atlantic Salmon Federation. Mandy Jo Pelletier is handling the salmon outreach locally. Give me about 3 minutes because we're heading over to her place to get more of the inside story in all this. Also, coming up later in the show, I'll catch up with James Francis, Penobscot tribal historian, and find out about Sugar Island, a new project the tribe is doing on an island between Greenbush and Passadumkeag. Spoiler alert, this is something you might want to do for yourself, and I'll be telling you how. Now, I know I'm planning to go out there later on this summer. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Saturday mornings at 9, Sunday mornings at 8. Today's show is mostly about Atlantic salmon. We've just released a whole bunch of baby salmon into Hemlock Stream in Argyle. School kids from Alton Elementary School have been taking care of these fish since they were eggs. And today was the day we set them free, hoping they will grow up, come back, and lay some eggs in the wild themselves. It's time we sit down with the person behind all this. Mandy Jo Pelletier, welcome to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine.
Hey, thanks.
Atlantic Salmon Federation, how'd you get this gig?
Oh, well, I didn't apply for it. I applied for a different job, and then I got a call that I got this one. It just kind of happened that way.
Wow. Well, in the big picture, Atlantic Salmon Federation is an international conservation organization. But in the small picture, we just dumped a lot of baby salmon into a stream in Argyle.
We did. The big picture is all those kids getting to do it and them seeing the whole process and being a part of it. And they'll remember that for the rest of their lives.
They were so into it. I mean, they were going through all the procedures, and I was able to talk to them about the life cycles and life stages of the salmon. They were really into it.
Luckily, it was a smaller group because the bigger groups, it gets a little hard to get everyone's attention together, we'll say.
No, really?
Yeah, it's a little busy. So no one went in the stream except for the fish. So that's really good.
And I know, and I would have bet money that somebody would have gone in.
It was close. I did catch one kid.
I know.
Yes.
Now, how many schools are you doing this with?
There's 68 schools across the entire state this year that I'm coordinating.
All of them?
Yes.
Is this a full-time job or a part-time job?
Part-time.
Are you nuts?
I am, obviously.
So how many releases are you going to be part of at these 68 schools?
I had wanted to do more, but time just does not allow. So I'm probably doing 5 or 6 this year.
Yeah. It's a real compressed time period because you've got to do it at a certain period of time.
It is, and then I have fish emergencies, I call them, pop up. So I had a release day set where I was going to go to 2 or 3, I couldn't remember how many, but there was a bunch of releases I was going to hit within a 2-day period, but I had a chiller break down in a tank that still had fish in it, so I had to go to Dedham and pick up a chiller where I knew there was no fish in the tank because I had just helped them release. I drove to Dedham and then to Skowhegan with a chiller.
Geez.
So, yeah.
And that's important because these are salmonids, which means that they're a cold water species and they're not going to tolerate something warm.
No, and it got almost to 60 degrees before I got there, so not good.
Can somebody in the school just throw in ice, or is that not going to work?
They had. She actually asked the local store if they had a frequent buyer ice card because this was her 3rd chiller this year. Mm-hmm. So she actually had 2 die on her.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, she's good about it, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's back up. What is the Atlantic Salmon Federation?
The Atlantic Salmon Federation strives to improve the habitat and educate citizens and bring salmon back in not only Maine, but internationally.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's obviously Atlantic salmon, so really we're just talking this coast of North America.
Yes, and even more specific, I work for the Maine Council of the Atlantic Salmon Federation, so that's why I'm focused right in Maine with environmental education outreach.
Yep, and their headquarters, I think, are right over the border in New Brunswick.
Yeah, they're right over there, and then actually in Brunswick, Maine, too.
Mm-hmm. Do they do anything in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, or Labrador?
They do. I don't really closely follow that, though. I'm so busy running in circles in Maine.
So, in a nutshell, what happened to all our salmon? We used to have so many.
Oh, we did. Then
it was one damn thing after another.
Literally. Yeah, I'm a dam activist because dams are the big problem. One of them, right now, a lot of focus and thought is going into different methods used by all these hatcheries and which ones are working better. And our populations they really aren't coming back. I do know that smolt trapping is like at an all-time high. I think they trapped 33 yesterday in Machias, and that was a huge number for them. I'm going to go down and be a part of that tomorrow. But overall, in the long term, the numbers just aren't getting better. We have obviously problems with fish passage and like the Howland Dam bypass. That's an amazing, huge project. So there is a lot more going into that now. But at the same time, we can't just focus on any one element because it's such a big dynamic problem. We need to think about what's happening to our salmon when they go out to sea. Are they being caught by industrial fisheries that are allowed to catch them still? Where are they going? What's happening to them? How are they affected by changes in ocean temperature and acidification?
Which is happening rather rapidly in the Gulf of Maine and scaring the bejeepers out of everybody.
Specifically in the Gulf of Maine, yeah.
I'm terrified. I'm glad I'm old because I may not live to see the results of this, but it's not going to be pretty.
It's not going to be pretty, no. My kids are bracing themselves. So.
Yeah. I mean, we are blessed with a particularly cold water fishery in the Gulf of Maine. The Labrador currents come down, they get stuck in there, and gives us an abundance of wildlife that isn't going to stay if that warms up.
No, it's not.
Oh, well, now I'm on my soapbox. See what you do to me?
Sorry.
There's also the threat of aquaculture with salmon. How much do we know?
Yes. So, actually, I just had some very delicious smoked and cold and hot salmon that was done in on-land pens. It's something that the Atlantic Salmon Federation is trying. I want to say it was done over in Minnesota and brought over for their annual banquet, and it was amazing. And what they're trying to do is get these ocean pens out from along our coasts. Because what's happening is this huge amount of Atlantic salmon that are being farmed are given medications and antibiotics and fed artificial foods and fed this huge amount of little fish that obviously we had to catch in the wild and then throw in the pen. It's not a sustainable process, and between the fish poo and the other things coming out of this tank that is just an open filter to the ocean, it's adding a lot of things that we just don't need.
Yeah, you're right about the poo, because we used to have a bigger aquaculture industry right here in the state.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was fouling up bays in ways that we didn't understand when we first put them in.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of fish poo.
Well, yeah, I mean, what do you got? 20,000 in a pen, and they're all pooping.
Yeah.
And the tide may wash it in and out, but a lot of it just settles right there and it follows.
It does, yeah. It's amazing how much it can add up so fast.
And threats at sea, we really don't understand those very well because there is fishing out there that is industrial. But we don't know if that's the only threat.
The cool thing is we've tagged some fish with little radio beacons, and we can tell where they've gone. So we've got some little doodles on a map showing where some of our fish have gone from Maine and where they go before they come back. But for the majority, we just don't know. We don't know where they're going. We don't know how long they're gone for. Sometimes they don't come back on an annual basis or at all. We don't know what's eating them and what they're eating. So.
I think one of the things that really amazes me is that 12,000 years ago, we were under a mile of ice right here.
Yeah.
And the Penobscot River didn't even exist before the Ice Age. So now salmon have a complex reproductive strategy that evolved in a pretty short period of time. And we messed with it.
We did. We tampered with a good thing, but we didn't know any better at first. And so we can plead the fifth on that.
There's a lot of things we used to do wrong that we're getting a little more thoughtful about.
Yeah. Well, we try to make money by doing things like the lumber industry and rerouting and canaling our streams, blowing up boulders that were in the way. But those boulders created eddies for fish to hang out behind and little shady pools. And so, I don't know if you've paddled the St. Croix.
I love the St. Croix.
Yes. So you can see that there's two channels in some places where there's a nice straight one where all the rocks have been blown up and it's an easy sail. And you can actually see the rotting logs in the bottom of the bed there. Because that was done, I think, the last time in the 70s, actually. But then there's these channels that are really complicated to paddle because there's all these big boulders still existing and they're beautiful. And I definitely choose the boulders.
Yeah. One of the problems with migration, and salmon migrate, obviously, when they come up to spawn, you see the stories of fish so thick you could walk across, that they were just countless salmon in the river. And those are the old stories. And you think, what an abundance of fish we have out there. What you don't realize is that's all there is.
Yeah.
You're seeing a huge chunk of the entire population right there. You feel like you can exploit it because there are so many, but in reality, that's all there is.
And the problem is when the gene pool is dropped, so you have a bottleneck. So if you only have 20 fish left in a certain stream that come to spawn, and that's a good number in Maine right now.
Yeah, really.
Then you're only mixing those 20 fish genes, and you have a lot more mutations and problems health-wise with the fish.
Now, that's one that never occurred to me. Now you're scaring me even worse.
Sorry.
Well, because describe how fish find their way back. This is an intricate part of their breeding strategy.
Yeah, I had a fun time talking to the kids first because we identified some of the species along the bank, some of the different plants, and I gave them a little idea of the tannins coming out from the bog, and that's why the water's so dark in that area. And then the different soil types and the geology and how it flows and all the different plants and things and the berries that drop in the water, those all give the stream a different scent. And that fish is able to say, I think this smells like home, all the way home until that home scent is nice and strong.
Which is why we release fish in Hemlock Stream today.
Yes.
Because those fish are going to remember that smell when they finally leave the area and come back to that particular spot. How many years from now?
Oh, let's see. You put me on the spot with that. I think it's 3 full years it takes for them to come back. If they do, the chances of those fish are so slim. They have so many things to get around and past and so many predators to dodge and run from. It's pretty amazing.
Which is why we only have 20 left.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting at the dining room table of Mandy Jo Pelletier of the Atlantic Salmon Federation. And we're talking salmon. Salmon has always had a huge cultural significance for this area, and not just for the natives who occupied this land before the Europeans ever got here. From the first white settlers to now, all Mainers have pursued the fish for sustenance and recreation too. There are salmon clubs all over the area. We'll cover that next. And coming up in about 10 minutes, I'll check in with Penobscot tribal historian James Francis about another cultural project taking place on an island in the Penobscot, Sugar Island. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. This is Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Mandy Jo Pelletier is a program coordinator for the Atlantic Salmon Federation. She's got her hands full with 68 school projects going on right now and a full calendar of speaking engagements around the state. And just as often, she's getting her feet muddy and her hands wet, trapping smolt, and doing everything possible to restore the Atlantic salmon. Salmon have had a huge cultural significance in this area.
Yes.
Especially with the tribes who were here before us. But even afterwards, this has been a big part of being an Eastern Mainer is salmon in the rivers.
Yeah, I gave a talk at the Eddington Salmon Club, and I sat down and had dinner with everyone, and I kind of asked them and interviewed them, as you're doing with me now, and I just wanted to learn more about it, and I found out that at one point they had over 500 members at that beautiful, that rapid that they have right there in the Penobscot, and they have less than 50 now. I mean, that's amazing, and most of them, it's just a charity thing. They don't come to a lot of the stuff, and they're aging out. I gave a talk about social media engagement and realized that there just wasn't that many people in the room that even knew what I was talking about. It was really difficult. So I think that we need a lot more outreach and engagement in only our older communities and just our children, but in the community itself at all levels.
Those Salmon Club buildings are still standing there, but there's nobody in them.
Yeah, no, there's crickets. They actually rent their buildings out to make money. I asked them how they're keeping it, and that's how.
Now, in order to have lots of salmon, you need lots of other sea-run fish to give them cover.
We
and
do.
Food. So we can talk about salmon till we're blue in the face, but there are other anadromous fish that matter in this whole equation.
Yeah, so a big one is the alewives. So I actually posted a picture of an osprey taken off with an alewife on my Fish Friends page yesterday because I wanted to share with all the teachers and folks that like my page that it's not just salmon that I like. So because that osprey took off with an alewife, that salmon underneath it may have been able to hide and take cover because fish swim at different levels and some are shinier and more excitable than others. So they're more interesting for the osprey to take off with. So if the osprey has the option of a fish that's easier to grab, higher up, that's shiny and easy to see, it will take it, and that's the alewife.
So if the alewife isn't there, then the salmon become the next prey, and they're gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the alewives are actually rebounding pretty well. They're a good indicator for where we've done good job with fish passage, and it shows where we have work to do too.
And I live right around the corner from Fish Passage on Pushaw Lake.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I get to walk over there and see what's going on.
Very cool.
So before I get much further with this, what is an anadromous fish?
Oh, it's a fish that is born in freshwater, and it goes out to sea and slowly changes on its way out, and it comes back to spawn.
And there are many different species of that. We have shad, I believe.
Yep.
Alewives we talked about, and salmon, of course, are anadromous as well. And all of these have been coming into the same river to spawn. Not all of them have the same characteristics in terms of being able to get past obstacles.
No, they all have different ones. A good case in point is the Milford Fish Lift. They have a very cool little elevator system there, and they can take photos of the fish. And they actually have a pretty good range of different fish there. And if you look that up online, you can see all the different photos. And I've seen... There's lampreys that are connected to fish, and there's like 5 different species of fish in one lift in one picture. It really amazed me. But then we have the lower tech passage where it was put in 50 years ago, which is pretty good for that time. I'll give them props for that. But it only allows one specific species to come through well, and the rest are left in the warm pool below and aren't able to spawn. And I'm sure that's just aggravating if you're a fish.
I would think so, because some fish can jump better than others.
Yeah.
Shad, as I remember, don't jump well.
No, they're not jumpers. They wouldn't do well in basketball at all.
But alewives and salmon, they can go up a fish ladder. Some of the other fish can't.
Definitely.
And as we just talked about, if you don't have those cover fish and those food fish, then you don't have the salmon.
And then they're hanging out in the pool down below, and that's not good cover at all.
Nope.
They don't know where to go from there, and their instinct is to continue trying, but they'll get eaten up by predators at that point.
Yeah. And you can see that in places like Machias, where right there at the bridge in East Machias, at the right tides, all those birds are sitting there ready to eat anything that moves.
It's a buffet.
It is. Now, there are bunches of salmon species out west. Why do we have only one?
Well, that's a good question. So it all
Get
comes
back to me
down
with that, would
to...
you?
Yeah, I know, right? I know. It all comes down to evolution. They have a lot more really big rivers over there with different characteristics. Unfortunately, most of them have really big dams, and they've been stopped up too. Their salmon only do one spawning, and then they die. And our salmon are able to do more than one. And hopefully several over a lifetime in healthy conditions and optimal conditions. So where our salmon are able to come back and create a bigger genetic pool, I think that's why we have less of an occurrence of different species here.
So if one of our salmon were to come upstream, run into a dam, not be able to spawn, at least do we get a second chance with it maybe?
That's right. We hope.
Yeah. In the West, if you come upstream to spawn and you die, well, you're not coming back.
No.
Okay. Now, we have a Down East Salmon Federation. How are these related?
Oh, they're good friends of ours down there. So the Down East Salmon Federation is an offshoot, and they have some very, very cool, innovative approaches that are way different from the other hatcheries in the region. They make super fish down there. They put them through a rigorous exercising program. They use a lot of natural, really cool things. Like they have a nesting box with this material that the little alvin can turn into fry inside. And then when they're hungry and they come up to the top for food, they actually let themselves out of the tank. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, really.
It is. I just went and viewed all this, and they keep all the eggs and teeny tiny alvin when they first come out in dark areas, so that they're just more environmentally acclimated to what's natural for them. So, and then they raise them to the point where they are super par. So, and then when they have super par and they're so well fit from the circulating water tanks, and they can be released, and I'm hoping that gives them a better chance.
And that's different than what you're doing in schools because they're just in little aquariums.
They're adorable.
They are, aren't they? Well, you had some at the Eastern Maine Sportsman Show, or at least they were eggs at that point.
Oh, yeah. There was a lot of excited folks about that. They had eyes, and they were squirming around inside the eggs at that point.
Is there something that when you're talking to people about salmon surprises them so much their eyes bug open?
The fact that they can see the eyes inside there when they're in the egg stage, that really excites them. I like to put them in a clear cup with a flashlight underneath so they can see right through, and you're able to see the entire embryo. So,
is there something that when people find out about salmon, they get all excited and say, here's where I send my money?
Oh, I tell them how big they get and that they come back year after year. And I remind them that if they help now, then it's helping future generations.
Because we're running out of time to save this.
In
fact, we may have run out of time. They're not bouncing back.
No, they're not.
So is there hope that they are going to bounce back? Are we learning enough to change the equation, or are we so confused about what happens out at sea that we're just desperate?
If there was no hope, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Good point.
I have a lot of hope, and my kids have a lot of hope, and everyone that I work with has a whole lot of hope. And that's why every different hatchery in the state has a slightly different way they do things, because they all have their own types of hope for these fish.
Well, with any luck, we've got a whole lot of kids learning to hope too. And not just hope, but do something about it. The morning began with a visit to Hemlock Stream in Argyle, where school kids from Alton Elementary School released the baby salmon they've been raising since they were eggs. About 95 of those baby salmon were released. If even one comes back to spawn in about 3 years, this will have been a major success. We've got a long way to go. My thanks to Mandy Jo Pelletier and the Atlantic Salmon Federation for letting me tag along today. Up next, we'll return to the river. James Francis is the tribal historian for the Penobscot Nation and is working on a new cultural project on Sugar Island in the Penobscot River. And when I say he's working on it, I mean he's working on it right this minute. I've managed to catch him at a bad time. He's actually loading materials onto a barge, getting ready to take them across to the island in order to rebuild some lean-tos where someday you could spend the night if you play your cards right. You're listening to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine, and this is Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. Welcome back to Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine on Sports Radio 92.9, The Ticket. You know, there are many parts of the country where the influence of Native American culture is obvious. You find a lot of places in Florida with Seminole names. You find a lot of places in the West that got their handle from the Sioux and other tribes. And it still amazes me how many places in Maine have Wabanaki names. Compare that to Virginia, which had plenty of Indians, but retained very few Indian place names. While things didn't always go smoothly in Maine, local history is mostly about coexistence and cooperation here, and our entire community benefits from the influence of Maine's tribes. James Francis is tribal historian for the Penobscot Nation. He is supervising a new project on Sugar Island in the Penobscot River. And, unfortunately, I'm interrupting. Bear with me here. I've got him on cell phone, right up where cell phone service starts to disappear, and he's had to put down a load of shingles to talk with me. So, hey, James.
Hey, Bob. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine. Lovely day to be doing work, and apparently you are. I'm actually catching you while you're preparing to do some repairs and some updates and stuff at Sugar Island.
Oh, absolutely. It's a really exciting day. You know, you got a project that's been on paper for so long, and you know, when you start hitting the ground, doing some work, it's an exciting.
Well, I'm going to be covering this a lot more extensively later on this year, but I wanted to squeeze this in as early in spring as I could and get this on everybody's radar. So let's start with, what is Sugar Island?
Well, Sugar Island is one of the reservation islands in the Penobscot River, and it's situated roughly between Indian Island and Passadumkeag on the river. And historically, the tribe back in the late 70s put 10 lean-tos on the island. And these lean-tos were for recreation purposes, for the youth to come up and do some camping and whatnot. And what we're doing is we're renovating those lean-tos, putting new roofs on, new floors, painting them, doing some minor repairs to them. And we're looking to do some cultural tourism activities on Sugar Island.
That to me is very exciting because, as you know, I'm kind of a fan of watching Penobscot culture. To me, it keeps me personally grounded in the great state of Maine that goes back long before Europeans arrived, and so I'm always fascinated by what the Penobscot Nation is offering culturally. And this, to me, sounds just outstanding. An idea of an island for use by the public as part of cultural tourism. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, well, the lean-tos that we're fixing are, stick-built with 2x4s and plywood. Last summer we had a project where we started a traditional village. We built a birch bark wigwam and a birch bark longhouse, on the other side of Sugar Island where the lean-tos are. And we've had some cultural programs in the past 6 months where we've done some activities that will enhance that village site that we're looking at.
Well, Sugar seems like a funny name for a Penobscot Island because it doesn't even seem to be a spirit name. It's not like Birch Island or something. So,
well, the ancient name for it, I was on your show talking about place names a while back, and the place name for this meant Sugar Plum Island.
Ah.
So it was a really long island, and that resource was available there, and there's quite a strip both on the mainland here and where the island is. So that resource was important enough that it retained this name. Oftentimes in the language it was called Sugals.
Oh, okay. So what can the public do with it now? Anything?
Well, right now we got a couple of pilot trips that we've teamed up with Mahoosic Guide Service. And we have 2 trips where these 4-day trips, you'll paddle down from Pasadena to Sugar Island, probably a 6-mile paddle in very benign water, and then spend a few days on Sugar Island camping. The people who join us on this trip will be doing cultural activities while on the island, basket making. We have someone who's very well versed in plant identification with both medicinal and edibles, and she'll be giving a tour. We'll be looking at basket making and root club carving demonstrations, drumming and singing around the fire at night, storytelling. So it'll really be an immersive cultural experience.
Now, they are going to be happening in August and September. They're 4-day tours, August 11 to 14 and September 15 to 18. How do people book a trip?
Well, all the booking is happening through Mahoosic Guide Service, because they're kind of leading the way, kind of showing the ropes on what it means to do this type of trip. We've teamed up with them. We be in the cultural side, and they're taking care of the logistics, including both the PR and also registering people for those trips.
And finding their website's pretty easy. It's just mahoosic.com. And if you don't know how to spell Mahoosic, then you're not really a Mainer anyway.
Exactly.
So mahoosic.com is where you go. And once you get there, you've got to actually go into the website a little bit deeply to find all of their canoe trips. And I think probably halfway down the page, you'll find Ways of the Wabanaki. And that's all the information about the trip. And it sounds ideal. I'm really thinking about doing it myself.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a great opportunity both for Mahoosic and for the tribe, but also for people who want to learn a little bit of something about our culture, immersed in an environment that our ancestors called home.
So, yeah, it's total immersion in that you're on an island and can't leave, so you're going to be forced to learn.
Yeah, well, exactly, but, I mean, they're not going to want to leave even after 4 days. It's an incredible island full of trails, and there's a large gorge in the middle of the island that's interesting looking, and the traditional village. When you're in that space, you're getting back in time.
Do you envision a time when tourists can just paddle over on their own and take a tour of the island, or is this always going to be a place where you have to be accompanied?
Well, I think this is always going to be an island that we're going to have to manage fairly closely, just because of this is one of those programs that we're really looking forward to bolster our cultural programs here at the reservation. So, access to the reservation islands has always been you must contact the tribe to do that.
Yeah. There is a trend going on here because there's that Thoreau Wabanaki Trail as well.
Well, this is part of the Thoreau Wabanaki Trail. In 1857, Thoreau paddled right past this island with Joe Polis. So this was towards the end of that journey. And back in May of 2014, when we recreated that 1857 journey of Thoreau, that crew actually stayed on Sugar Island the last night of the trip before making their way down to Indian Island.
So at some point, I want to come out there paddling with you. We'll do that later on this summer. And I want to see this for myself and bring a microphone.
Hey, you're more than welcome, Bob. I look forward to seeing you.
Terrific. And once again, anybody who wants to look into booking this trip before it's all gone, that's Mahoosic.com, and just look at the canoe trips they offer, and you'll find it, again, halfway down the page, Ways of the Wabanaki. And that's Mahoosic.com to find information about this trip.
That's right.
James Francis, Penobscot Tribal Historian. I've been anxious to get this on the air because this is a subject we'll return to once or twice this summer. For centuries, the Penobscot River has been a canoe superhighway. There are cultural landmarks everywhere you look, and preserving some of them for future generations is good for them later and good for us now. And by the way, those Mahoosic trips are pretty cheap for what you get. When word gets out, I expect those will fill up fast. Once again, that's Mahoosic.com. And our web address is 929theticket.com. This show and all previous shows are archived right there. You can re-listen online anytime. Bob Duchesne's Wild Maine airs every Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 8. Brought to you by Hammond Lumber, Doors Equipment, Napa Auto Parts, and EBS on Sports Radio 92.9 The Ticket.